Welcome back to the Desert Well, where we gather every week around the well that is Jesus to be a part of the conversation, to drink deeply from his good news. I think I got that backwards. But Derek, today is article day, and what is our article about today?
AI and what the Pope had to say about AI.
Bum, 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 bum. It was a good conversation, I think. We read through the article, shared a little bit about what our thoughts were and maybe how a Lutheran Christian could think about why on earth you should care about what the Pope says, but then also a way to view AI as well. So what was your favorite part?
Well, more than a couple, cultural references in there. We talked about some of the movies that came to mind and shows that came to mind along with these things too. So if you want to hear where our minds go with that as well, it was in there. But no, it was a good conversation, good article about what we should be thinking about with AI. So hope you enjoy.
So enjoy as we gather around the well that is Jesus. So did you read this?
I skimmed it.
So the real question is, did you read the encyclical?
This first part?
Yeah, so like the whole thing. Like this is the article, right, of someone responding to the Pope's encyclical, which was like a 200 paragraph. I put it on a PDF, and it was like 55 pages of a PDF.
Oh, no, I did not read that.
Right, and so neither did I, but I did read a couple sections because I felt guilty. Like
sure.
We're gonna read an article of a response to something, and I've not actually read the actual document. Like that just seems like malpractice, if you will.
I did see some news articles about things though.
Right, and
specifically one on this,
like a news article, like a mainstream news type thing. Right. So I did some research too, because I don't know, when's the last time you thought about what an encyclical is?
Never.
Right. Good. So I also was like, I know this is a thing, I know it's a word, but I have no idea like what it means. So I did a little bit of reading on this using the always authoritative Wikipedia.
Okay.
And a couple of their Catholic websites. So I'm going to trust that the internet is generally true. I thought about using AI.
Said Abraham Lincoln, right? Everything on the internet is true. Quote so Abraham Lincoln.
I thought about using AI to summarize the encyclical for me and or give me information about the encyclical. But since it's basically him saying that we should be very cautious of AI in that spirit, I did not use AI for this. So there's someone laughing right now. At least I hope so. Anyway, so what I learned was an encyclical is just the word comes from, I think it's Greek, I think. Don't space me on that. Don't quote me on that. But it means circular letter. So the things that I read try to compare it to like how Paul's letters would have been circularized or sent around. And so it's not meant as like the final word. So this is where we get into some like very interesting...
It's not like an edict type of thing.
Right. Okay. So this is where then you get into the word magisterium.
Okay.
And so the Catholic Church believes the Pope has the ability to speak authoritatively on interpretation of Scripture, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's somewhat different than what we would say, right? That obviously there's lots of things maybe we might disagree with the Catholic Church. I'm just having a conversation with Angie that Lutherans are not Catholic light. No, we're not. We're different. Not for the conversation for now, though. So there's been 19 encyclicals on various social issues in the last 100 years.
That's it?
Right. So
I would figure that would be once a year.
Right. So it's not a super common thing.
Got it. So when it happens, people pay attention.
Right. And so then the magisterium, there's two different types of magisterium. So it's like a Catholic education class. I'll say why I think we should care about this in a second. Because, we're Lutherans, so who cares what the Pope thinks? Maybe. There's two different types of magisterium. A solemn magisterium and an ordinary magisterium. And the solemn is the this is what it is, claiming infallibility, like this is the truth, there's nothing else. Or there's what's called ordinary magisterium, which is more of like, hey, this is my teaching on this thing, what I think about this social idea. So in our context, are you familiar with CTCR? Commission of Theological Church something?
I know the
You know
letters,
what they do? Sure.
but sure.
So do you know what they do?
Not off the top of my head right now.
Okay, so Derek's like, it's the Friday of the first week of kids not being here. I am tired. Leave me alone. So the CTCR in our church body is a group of pastors, theologians, who put together documents, usually at the request of like a synodical convention.
Okay.
And then they produce these documents on social teachings, issues, and then do through the scriptures, that sort of thing. And so there's stuff all over the place. They just did one on the communion element stuff. So I sent you that one, right? So should we use grape juice in the middle, or should we use some sort of de-alcoholized wine? They've done things on the Holy Spirit, like Pentecostal. Yeah, like a Pentecostalism. Is that the right phrase? I think that's right. Things like marriage, things like women's role in the military, things like that. Like there is a CTCR document for a lot of things. Now, those documents are not, we would say, not binding. So this is probably more in depth than we need to go. But as a pastor, I am bound to the scriptures and to the confessions. Right? And as a called worker, you take the same promise, I think. So you're bound to the scriptures and confessions, not so much to CTCR. Right? So it's not like this is the same thing as scripture. You better believe
document.
it. Right. Like, but it is this is what we should do
through the lens of scripture and
our confessions. Yeah. Right. And so there's one on, what are Mormons? What do we believe about them? And there it spells out all the differences, stuff like that. So that's what my impression as a Lutheran of what the ordinary magisterium is. Now, I'm probably wrong because I'm not a Catholic, but
it's probably fairly similar.
But hey, this is a helpful thing from an authoritative source that people trust and or look to for opinions, interpretations,
guidance,
right,
etc.
Yeah. Right. And so before we read this, here's my introduction question, the one that you're never ready for. Why should we care about what Pope Leo has to say on AI? What do you think? And the answer, I don't think we should, is also acceptable.
I would say just because we should care because he is a Christian. And I would say a well-learned Christian, that like he does have some authority, like obviously in the Catholic Church he does. So he holds a seat of power, right? And I would say he is looking at it through a theological lens. And so we should listen, but also be skeptical.
Right. Well, we should continue to see the world as Lutheran followers of Jesus.
But I think that that's also true for anything that is put out anyways. We should be skeptical. What's the phrasing that we say often? Trust but verify.
Right. Bitcoiners say, don't trust, verify.
Don't trust and verify. Really?
Don't trust, verify. That's a whole nother conversation. So it said basically what I was going to say. Like think about the Pope as a influencer of Christianity, right? Catholicism, the largest branch of Christendom in the world, when they're...
It's probably the most common Christian that you'll find in the news.
Right. When their supreme leader is probably not the best way to call Pope. I mean, no disrespect. When their leader speaks about something, they're influencing or trying to contribute to a conversation that, yes, we might disagree with their office, et cetera, about who they are. We should at least hear what they have to say about it and then ask questions about this. So what we're going to do is we're going to read this article, not written by a Lutheran, but from Christianity Today, on this statement, this encyclical, his first, that he wrote on, I'm not going to be able to say it correctly, Magnifica Humanitas, I think is how you say that. And so we're going to read it. I will say that there is a great 1517 video that just came out right after I'd sent you this, called A Lutheran Response to Pope Leo's Encyclical. So we'll link that below so people can watch it.
Go watch that too.
Yeah, go watch that. It's probably much more informed than what I'm about to say and what we're about to say. But I felt like this was this is a moment where we can talk about something that is in the world, right? That AI is happening, and someone has spoken who has a large following, and let's have a conversation about it. Sound good? So now that my 20-minute introduction is over on why you should care and why you should listen, let's go ahead and read it. We'll do what we normally do. I think I crossed out the advertisement section that said, sorry, something went wrong. Please try again. That's not in the actual text.
I was really hoping to read that part. But
So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's just take it a couple of paragraphs at a time. Or how about we do let's just read until we stop. How's that? Because I got lots.
Well, let's go page by page. But
that's good. Yeah, let's do that.
So that there's at least some structure. All right, I'll start though. Sometimes the Pope knows how to nail some theses to the door too. In his first encyclical, Pope Leo XIV articulated a message all human beings need to hear, a protest this Protestant can gladly join against the tech bro utopia on offer right now. On this matter, every Christian should listen to the Pope, both in his warning and in his underlying hope. What's at stake is the very meaning of the soul. In Magnifica Humanitas, Leo contends that the accelerating speed of artificial intelligence is not just a technological development for foreseeable economic crisis, but a spiritual and civilizational test that forces us to face what it means to be human. And the danger, the Pope rightly warns, is not so much that artificial intelligence will become human-like or too human-like, but that human beings will become more like machines. Interesting. Mm-hmm. The encyclical argues modern society is increasingly shaped by a technocratic paradigm that prizes efficiency, control, optimization, and power above human dignity, reducing people to functions and relationships to systems. Using the biblical contrast between the Tower of Babel and the rebuilding of Jerusalem under Nehemiah, Leo moves beyond a simplistic dichotomy of technology good or technology bad, and looks at the two paths technology can take toward domination, homogenization, and dehumanization, or toward communion, solidarity, and rehumanization. And he sees what's really behind the rush toward the post-human path, in which we view weakness, dependence, mystery, and even personhood as problems to engineer away.
And that's pretty much all he does, I think, in the lens of summarizing the encyclical, really. And then he kind of launches in the rest of the article kind of on his thoughts, what he thinks about it, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting, because I did watch that video, the claims that he makes about the problems with the encyclical, which maybe we'll wait until later to get into that. But this idea of reducing people to functions and relationships to systems, that's the part. So I read the part of the encyclical on technology and dominance is what the part was. So it's like the sort of middle section. It talked about, AI, what AI was, that sort of thing. And he very much argues in that section, the Pope does, for a human-centric view of the world, and is very clearly concerned that AI is pushing us to this place of needing to choose basically our human beings and the humanness of humans the most important thing, or is the other parts of what AI might offer us, efficiency, control, profit, etc., is that the most valuable thing? It's a very interesting case, if you will. But let's just keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't read this, so I don't know how much I can contribute to it yet.
Derek's like, don't look at me like I'm supposed to say something yet. Let's keep going. I'll pick up here.
So looking at me like, come on now.
The Pope's words have already been met with disdain by those in whose interest it is to put such questions. Ooh, I don't even know what this word is. In abeyance?
Abeyance.
Abeyance. What does that word mean?
Oh, come on now.
Whatever that word means. To put
I can't look
questions.
it up on my phone.
That's right. It's being used as a recording device. Until the economy, global security, and personal routine are inextricably set in the sort of laissez-faire arms race that will far exceed that of nuclear proliferation. Lots of big words. Nuclear weapons, after all, cannot design other nuclear weapons. U.S. Interior Secretary Douglas Burgum remarked in a television interview that it is not, quote, part of the role of being Pope, unquote, for Leo to say what he did. As a Protestant, I, of course, have vigorous disagreements with my Catholic brothers and sisters about whether Jesus promised to build his church on this rock, quoting Matthew 16, applies to an unbroken chain of succession from Peter. But surely we can all agree that a higher authority on matters of what it means to be God or to be human is not the office of the Secretary of the Interior. I just wrote LOL next to that one.
I'm laughing right now, yeah.
But it does, so it gets to what I think is part of the tension, because he is, I think, hitting somewhat of a core, or this Douglas Burgum guy is somewhat hitting something. And so it's the two realms conversation.
It's the stay in your lane, Pope.
Right. And so this is
Don't talk about the state things, worry about the church things.
Right. And this is where, again, that 15-17 video is really good, is it dives into what's the purpose of the church, right? And so he's going to talk about, or the Pope talks about, how it's a concern over humanity, right? And yet we would say that the church's main role is to proclaim the forgiveness of sins won by Jesus Christ's death and resurrection. And that the role of the state is to be the one who governs the punishment of those who do evil.
Right. Justice. Yes.
Right. And that they're two separate things. And that in some ways, yes, it's a stay in your lane, but at the same time, the church has the ability and the God-given command, if you will, to speak when the state is not doing their job. And so maybe that's where this becomes part of it, like, hey, you're not this Douglas guy. I'm speaking for him, even though I don't know who he is. Maybe he doesn't know that he's tapping into that. Like, hey, Pope, this is not your thing, right? Aren't you the church? Shouldn't you be concerned with that? Why are you talking to me about AI and what AI is going to do? But
well, and I mean, from both sides, right? The government is looking at it probably more from money, efficiency. You know, we're always looking to scale things, scale the economy. Well, one of the ways that you can scale the economy is with AI very quickly. And I mean, it mentioned the bubble, right? Artificial intelligence bubble or whatever. Right. You know, that's part of what the government has to worry about. But then on the other side, it's like, well, we should be concerned about AI in the religious realm too, for the very purpose of...
Right. We'll talk about it, but this is where my reason for why we should care is more connected to like a two kinds of righteousness language than anything else. Okay, let's keep going. But Burgum represents Washington's deference to Silicon Valley. I think this is what you're talking about. Part of that compliance is prudent. After all, these are not simply resolved questions. If the United States Congress were to imagine, quoting or parenthesis, to imagine the most extreme possibility, parenthesis, to outlaw AI, that would be the equivalent of banning the bomb. I'm assuming he's talking about the nuclear bomb. The latter would not denuclearize the world, but would put the United States and its allies at the mercy of hostile countries with nukes, most notably China and Russia. Moreover, Washington officials know the precarious state of the world economy is quite possibly teetering atop the AI industry. That's what you were just talking about.
Yeah, there's another.
Right. Silicon Valley points out things of which we should rightly be afraid, but then argues the only alternative is to hand limitless power to the smart people who can innovate their way to the future. Vast economic inequality, potential mass unemployment, and psychological degeneration are part of the price of progress if they happen, they say, and we can think of something to do about them then, or we can ask our machines to think of something. And so when I read this, one of the things Leah talked about this week came to mind, and one of those was concepts around strategy, so how you do your mission, the things that you do. One of the axioms was that simple is not simplistic, right? And so I thought about this as, this is like a very simplistic solution, right? Oh, well, we just need to give them all of the power and they'll innovate our way into the future and we'll move fast and break things and kind of, whatever happens, happens.
And look back and be like, yeah, whatever damage has been done is done. And yeah, it's very interesting that he compares it to a nuclear weapon.
I mean, some people compare it to they say it's the biggest technological advance in our lifetime.
Well, yeah, I would say that's true.
Right. And so in the sense of the ability to harness power, right? So the Claude model called Mythos. I don't know if you've seen any of this. So Anthropic's AI model, Claude, Mythos is their newest one that is not yet public,
Okay.
But there was a while, a couple of weeks ago, these things move so fast, where it was like a fear. They said it was too powerful to release to the public. Like it was too good. Like it was going to be dangerous to release this model to the public. But then I think I saw a tweet or a post on X yesterday that they're going to probably release it in a couple of weeks.
It must not be that powerful then.
Right. Well, but
or
it's
they're just like, we don't really care. It's a price of progress.
Well, yeah, and it's like it's also driven by investors and money. So, I saw too that Anthropic just passed OpenAI as like the thing. And so it's a race, right, to the top of people who can give or buy whatever and then create the most powerful thing, because a lot of people think that the AI race is a winner take all, right? That it's not going to be there's lots of options. It's going to be one will become the most, and then everyone else, maybe there'll be a few kind of things. And so you think about it in a nuclear bomb setting, it's winner take all.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he who has the most nukes holds the power. Right? I mean, that's just kind of how it is. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. What's even more unsettling is that the, quote, smart people, unquote, the tech bros we are told to trust have in many instances shown themselves to be creepily cold to any aspect of humanity that is not quantifiable and consumable. Some of them have shown themselves to be, in their own personal lives, eerily utopian, seeking to find ways to immortality by uploading their brains to the cloud or rejuvenating themselves with blood transfusions from younger men. Sorry, the uploading their brains to the cloud.
Yeah.
It's a TV show. It's called Upload.
Yes, it is. I've actually watched the first season of that.
Yeah.
Very unique concept.
Apparently not.
Well, yeah, but you're like in this dystopian, you live there, or the main character kind of is uploaded into this.
Yeah, you it's your eternal place where you
live on forever as like an avatar.
But
type
yet you
person.
can interact with the real world.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wouldn't recommend it. I feel like I have to say that.
The TV show?
Yeah. Not pastor endorsed.
Not pastor endorsed. It is entertaining.
Yeah, right. There you go. An intriguing idea.
Yes. Okay, back to this. And some of them have shown themselves to be just as eerily dystopian, building elaborate bunkers for themselves for if and when their, quote, move fast and break things, unquote, mantra moves fast enough to break everything.
Which is a real thing. Have you read some interesting articles about this?
About the like big bunkers up in the mountains. Yeah,
It's like really popular. Like people who have
well,
lots
there's
of
like,
money
and like
are
home
spending.
bunkers.
Yeah, like another great TV show, not pastor endorsed. The Silo is like basically this in real life, right? The world crumbles and people are forced underground, and they live in these.
The Preppers TV show.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So anyway, it's not just
Preparing for-
people who are what we might call a little off. It's for the ultra wealthy.
I want to know where the spaceship is, though.
Yeah, where's what TV show is that? What movie is that? Look,
WALL-E.
WALL-E, or is it Day After Tomorrow where they get in a thing too, like a spaceship? There's another one. I'm making so many cultural references right now. I feel so proud of myself.
There's a lot of TV shows like that. But
Anyway.
yeah, all right, let's go. All right, Leo's Tower of Babel imagery gets at this very dynamic. After all, Genesis tells us the Babel project was grounded in two psychological impulses. One of them was utopian. Let us make a name for ourselves, from Genesis 11, verse 4. The human desire was for glory and self-exaltation, escape the limits of creaturelessness and become like gods. The second impulse was dystopian. Lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. What was present was the odd mixture of pride and fear. Ironically, the biblical account does not discount the possibilities of technology. In Genesis, the wisdom of God actually concurs with the prehistoric tech bros about their own power, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. The confusion of their language, hacking the algorithm, this is in quotations, was like the exile from the garden, not a peak of revenge, but an act of mercy. Our technologies have advanced, but human nature has not evolved out of these same dreads: fear of mortality, of weakness, of dependence, of limits, of being forgotten. Babel is not ultimately an Icarus story of humanity getting too big. It is not so much about arrogance as about panic. It is about getting comprehensive control, creating power and community in a world that feels dangerous and lonely.
So, a few things. He does talk about this idea of, he uses the image of Babylon, Tower of Babel, and the story of Nehemiah and people rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem in the Encyclical. It's sort of like what do we want to do? Do we want to build this together and kind of make a nice thing for humanity to live in, or are we going to build something that is God's going to come down on us and say, hey, this is bad, et cetera, et cetera. They're very interesting to think about the Tower of Babel as gospel, right? That's basically what he's saying, that the confusion of language was actually an act of mercy, that there is benefit to our limitations in not being able to do the things that, and that's again something I don't think people think about. But then this one to me is very true. So I have talked with on the other podcasts about like why all of that stuff matters, and part of it is because humanity is broken, right? And so the phrase "don't trust, verify" leans into that we can't trust anyone in some ways, right? Like we're all broken, sinful people, and it doesn't matter what the technology is. The technology is usually driven by, controlled by, used by what? Broken people. And so this idea that, hey, we are a bunch of broken people who are leveraging the technologies we have undoubtedly will mean that the broken people will do broken things. Right, yeah. You see where the line of thinking goes.
Well, and even so much so, like, with all of the AI stuff, I go back to one movie, and this is like an early 2000s movie. Mm-hmm. Will Smith, iRobot.
I don't know if I've actually seen that.
Yeah, it's one of those that it's just like robots take over the world, but why are they taking over the world? Because of the artificial intelligence. And like there's a power off button on all of them, but
doesn't actually work.
AI figures out a way to not allow the power button to work, essentially. But sorry, sidetrack. But I would say too, like,
this has become like just what are the movies that Derek and Jared know about?
But even so, like the best of intentions, like can even go wrong. Mm-hmm. So even if like the person or people that are developing these things have the best of intentions, I guess you could say it in the same way. Maybe that's why the comparison to the nuclear weapon was so good, or maybe not so good, so powerful, was that it wasn't so much so. Wow, I can't speak.
It's the bomb to end all wars, or a bomb to end all wars, right? Isn't that what they called it?
That's what they said. But like the intention might not be for bad; it might be for good things. But in the wrong hands,
right? And of course, the argument then would be we either need to kill that technology, but it's sort of the cat is out of the bag.
For an iRobot, we can't, because they don't have an off button anymore.
Right. It's when things have been released, especially like these AI things that are open source, anyone can download it and run it. I could run it on my Mac. You could run it on your Mac in your office, your own sort of AI operating system.
Yeah, the one that we were talking about today,
right,
gives you the option to go into the code and.
Right, just tell it and it'll do it for you.
It's crazy.
So, needless to say that broken people are the ones who are using these technologies and making them. And so we shouldn't be surprised that broken things are happening. But then it's also this idea that we want to, right, so he says it's not as much about arrogance as about panic. It's about getting comprehensive control. And what is that? It's the original sin in the garden. What do Adam and Eve want to do? They want to be like God. And so often, you and me too, right? That's the problem. We want to be like God. We want to be in control. All right. We are in a Babel moment now. The problem is not that human beings are capable of creating artificial intelligence. The problem is that we are capable of creating artificial intelligence without first asking what it means to be human beings. We are not even psychologically prepared, that's the right word, prepared for the smartphone and social media age, which is now almost 20 years old. Indeed, that technological revolution is closer to the metaphor of the wheel than to the space station when compared to where AI is going. But we are still confused about how to live in this era. I think that's so true. So here,
we're just figuring out the ramifications of social media use, constant cell phone use. Like, what does that mean for developmentally, for children
kids,
who are developing,
teenagers,
for their brain, and like how it stimulates their hormone releases and serotonin and what are all the other ones? The endorphins. I don't know.
Dopamine.
Yeah, dopamine.
Maybe that's the one you're missing.
And how that it can lead to a legitimate addiction.
So the thing that to me, this is where the Mennonites, right, or the Amish, maybe you know them by. I think it's Cal Newport who talks about how they ask the question. They take a technology and they allow people to use it. They're like elders or whatever, and then they evaluate on if it's going to help them live their best life, their mission. And that's exactly what he says is the problem, is that we don't sort of first say, hey, what is this going to do to me and to those people I love?
We just create it and then ask questions later.
Yeah, or we just use it because it sounds fun. Or making pictures of, my kids with whatever AI. Am I concerned that now I've uploaded my children's faces to some cloud? Whatever. I already probably assume that they've been seen on cameras at stores that are face tracking. It's one of those but it still is hey, we need to think about what these things mean before we just begin them. So he continues to talk about what's happened in the cell phone, social media era. He says, in fact, we are even struggling to know how to sin as human beings rather than as machines. Interesting point again. As Axios noted a few weeks ago, teenage sexual activity and alcohol usage are now dramatically down. Casinos are not nearly as full as they once were. This is good, and we would think there is reason to celebrate until we look into why all these things have dropped. It's not because of a resurgence of chastity, fidelity, and prudence. I've never thought of this before. So he writes this. Instead of vices of connection, bad enough, they've been replaced with vices of isolation, even worse. And so he's comparing where these sins take place, right? In person, connecting with someone else, or in isolation. Sex has been replaced with pornography. Happy hour at the corner bar has been replaced with solitary weed smoking. The poker table has been replaced with online betting. Heated, animalistic vices replaced by cold, machine-like vices does not a revival make. Interesting, Yoda. Okay. The solution Silicon Valley tells us is to head even more quickly in the direction we are headed, with even less thought to where we are going and who is taking us. And now he's going to turn and talk about the way in which we are supposed to think about it. And then we'll kind of talk about, well, okay, then what? But the Christian vision of reality is strikingly different. The image of God is not reducible to one replicable thing, intelligence or decision-making or even language, for these are all necessary aspects of it. There is something integral about what it means to be human that cannot be chopped up into analyzable bits, much less replicated by disembodied elemental powers. Because you hear so often, well, what is a human? Well, it's that you can think. Well, it's that you can feel. Well, it's that you can this. And so I think it's right to say it's not one thing. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in the like, well, what's the one thing that AI will never be able to do? And then thereby we'll know that AI will never be able to replace human beings. It's one of those, if you base your argument in that, the day it happens, then you're kind of falling over. So anyway, he continues to write, the logos, or the word, is not algorithmic. The word that created all things, in which all things hold together, is about communion. He quotes John 1, the word was with God. It's about personality, the word was God, and incarnation. The word became flesh and dwelt among us. We cannot face an AI era if we do not apprehend at least something of that, even though we cannot comprehend it in anything approaching its full weight of glory. And so he talks about Jesus as, the spoken, written, incarnate word. Let's keep going.
You want to keep going?
Well, it's your turn to read. You're to flip the page. I just read the first paragraph for you. Sorry.
I do like his choice of words here, though. The logos is not algorithmic.
Mm-hmm. Jesus can't be boiled down to science and numbers. That's my note I wrote next to it.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going then. Let us remember, though, that the Babel story is not Frankenstein. The account does not end in horror. The breaking apart of people is not the end game, but the beginning. What came after all that was What came after all that was one human told to, in quotes, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, from Genesis 12, verse 1. And he went out, not knowing where he was going, from Hebrews 11, verse 8. But that solitary person heard his own name called repeatedly. He heard himself personally addressed, and his response was not with technique or mastery or control. His response was simply, here I am, from Genesis 22, verse 11. Babel led to that call, and that call was grounded in a promise. And that promise was born in the human technology of a feeding trough, died on the technology of an execution stake, and walked out of the technology of a burial cave. That promise has a human name, body, and voice. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, from 1 Peter chapter 2. And what he's building is not made with human hands. We will not know exactly what we ought to do at every step in the new age of machines, but we know how to start. We know how to remember that the voice that said, Adam, where are you, is the same voice that speaks for us. Here I am. Christians have many differences. Our communion is splintered all over the place, but every once in a while someone comes along to remind us of the godness of God and the humanity of humankind, and how both are held together in the person of Jesus. That has always sounded strange. It will sound even stranger in the era in front of us. But when it comes to the most important question of the AI age, Pope Leo is right and the tech bros are wrong.
What a strong sentence to end on. So what do you think? Does he make a compelling case that all Christians should listen to Pope Leo on AI?
Yes and no. I mean, I would be interested in reading more about what he has to say. I feel like there was a lot of ways that he could have gone like more in depth about it.
Yeah, I was done. It was kind of like, that's it?
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more like depth.
What am I supposed to do now?
But I think it's a good talking point, though. like to get the conversation started for most people. Like, what does it mean to be in the AI world, and how should we be thinking about it, right? And when we had Pastor Barry on, as one thing that he talked about was not using AI to write sermons or prayers,
right?
because it's soulless, right? And that's kind of stuck out to me too, and stuck with me, I guess I should say. Like, I'm not writing sermons, and I'm not necessarily writing prayers the way that you are, right? But it made me think about like the limitations that AI does have. Like, it might not have limitations in the worldly sense, but it definitely has limitations in the soul side of things.
Sure. Like, an AI cannot be saved.
No. Nor can, well, I shouldn't say this yet, but nor can we upload our soul into a machine.
Right.
And if we can in 20 years, then I will
You'll eat your own words?
revisit this, and I will be like, I'm sorry.
Well, your AI will probably visit it for you, and then find a way to like delete it so that then your record looks good and you never said anything in error.
Oh, that's an interesting take.
Right?
Having an own personal AI.
Oh yeah,
that goes
like your
through
own
and just
AI
like,
agent. Absolutely.
just
I don't know
makes
how people
you
do
look
this, but
sinless.
supposedly it's a thing. They have their own agent that can talk like them, and you know, because they're a voice training models. So 11 Labs is like the most popular one.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that there's probably a lot more AI stuff than we're even remotely aware of.
Sure. Even like we said, I've stopped listening to podcasts, but one of them I used to listen to was called the AI Daily Brief. And every day it would talk about 5 short stories of things happening in AI and then one big one, because it's that, that fast. It is unbelievable. Like, just how, I still remember using, which makes me feel old. Like, I still remember using ChatGPT for the first time. And like,
I remember when it came out, and I was like, I'm not using that. Why would I use that?
How magical it felt. Like, it was unbelievable.
See, I was on the other side, I was very hesitant to use anything, because I was like, this is going to take over the world.
See, this is me. I will be that person who's like, yeah, let's try it. Like, what's the problem? And then do it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is bad. I probably shouldn't do this.
What I was thinking, though, during this whole thing, in the comparison to Babel, it's like, well, AI has got us back to a point where the barriers set up by the language barrier is no longer there. I mean, obviously, if you and I are still sitting here without devices and you're speaking a different language, I'm not going to understand you.
Right.
But I can take my phone now and I can have an AI translate it in real time what it means.
Right. Apple sells AirPods that you can put in your ears and download another language, and you can just talk to each other.
Which is wild. So I remember when we were in Germany, I think it might have been the first time, we walked into this like flower shop or just like little shop, and I knew a few German words, and so I was speaking with the lady to begin with, and then I wanted to tell her, like, we love her shop, it's very beautiful, but I didn't know how to say this, so I said it in English, and she goes,
like, she looked at you like, what are you saying?
Like, yeah, I have no idea what you're saying. And so I was like, English? And she goes, no.
Gotcha.
And so I got out my phone, went to Google Translate, typed it in. I was like, nah, it looks right. I don't know. So I went like this, and she goes, oh, thank you. So even then it was crazy what you could do. And like, at that point, you could take a picture of something and it would translate it for you. And that was back before any AI was around. So it's just crazy how we've kind of come again full circle to things, where we were sent out from the Tower of Babel with confusion, and now we can understand each other relatively easily.
And yet there's still elements of confusion, right? I mean, you think about the ability, it's why like most image models won't allow you to create images of celebrities, right? Because just think about the crazy things people might make. So the thing that I came away with, I was asking first, like, I wish he would have said more about how to think about it.
To live in the world?
Yeah, like how to do it. So,
because it kind of seems like he's saying, well, AI is bad. Across the board.
I mean, maybe this is my like own technology bias sort of thing and we've talked a little bit about technology before, that, Luther talks about your tools are all crying out for you to use them in relationship with your neighbor. And so last night was our new member class, and we talked about the 10 Commandments. And I always start when I teach on the 10 Commandments that you actually don't have to follow these. Believe it or not, Jesus freed you from the Old Testament law, including the 10 Commandments. And everybody usually takes most of the class time to understand that, because it's so, we basically think, oh, these are the 10 Commandments, I must still follow them today. Well, no, but they're helpful. And so what you do, because everything, again, in the Old Testament points to Jesus, and Jesus says all of the commandments in the laws and the prophets can be summed up with 2 simple commands: love God and love your neighbor, right? And love people. And I think that's a beautiful framing for this, right? And so maybe the question you ask is, how is this allowing me to love God and love my neighbor? And or what does my neighbor need? And so on one hand, we could talk about, is AI going to get in the way of us proclaiming the gospel, which would be that sort of vertical realm? And I'm sure there's probably some ways it will, right? You ask it to give to you evidence that there is no God, it probably will give you that, that sort of thing. Like it might create some more opportunities for problems there. But at the same time, I think there's a way in which we can talk about being concerned about it that is apart from the, hey, AI is not going to save us, right? We know that. It's not going to usher in the second coming of Jesus. Only the Father knows when that is coming. And so there's also a healthy amount of like realism behind it that is as awesome as it is to use at times and experience when it works well, that we know Jesus says you're always going to have the poor with you, right? That our sin and brokenness is not something that AI can engineer, algorithm, code an agent away.
Might be able to wipe it off the internet, but it doesn't wipe it off your...
Right. Like it's not going to... It could never take away our sin and our desire, our curved inwardness on ourselves, right? That's something only Christ has done and only will be done when he actually returns. And so I think if you start with all of that and like say, hey, these are all the things we have to think about first, then it allows you to think more horizontally.
Yeah, and I go back to what my father-in-law said back when we had him on the podcast, but of course I've heard him talk about this more too, that God gives technology to the church and the world uses it. So does that make AI something bad in and of itself? Or do we just need to think about how we're going to use it as a church?
Right.
Because I think that there are some benefits, but I would agree it shouldn't be something that we should write sermons with or prayers with or look for guidance from necessarily. But how can we use it as a church to benefit our neighbor, to spread the gospel more? Are there ways that we can lean into it so that we can be more efficient in certain areas, so that we can do other ministry things? Right, so that we can have more relational, like face-to-face conversations. Right. So,
and that is one of the things that he talks about. You said that Pope Leo thinks that it is danger for us to lose our desire for human connection.
And I would say I almost see it going the opposite way, though.
Well, it will for some.
Yeah, not all. I mean, there are very many like stories out there where people get on chatbots and they just interact with them. That's all they do. So I definitely see what he's saying here too about like the inwardness of it. But at the same time, I think that there's a larger number of people who are seeing this and they're saying, no, this is not relational and we still need relationships. At least that's my hope.
Right. I mean, that's the whole God became a human being, right? God made humans. We were created for connection, for relationship. So he talks about two other things that I think are helpful for us. He talks about transhumanism and posthumanism, which I've heard the terms, but if you would have asked me what they meant, I don't think I could have defined them. So he defined them as transhumanism as enhancing humanity through technology.
Sure.
So like through that means like through humans. So like it's a making life better. So in the running world, it's super shoes, right?
Well, you can
propel you forward. And
prosthetics would be one.
Sure, right.
Hearing aids, contacts, glasses, like all of those are technologies that have enhanced our lives.
Right,
Yes.
right. And so we would say those are probably good. Right. The enhanced games were just here in Vegas.
Steroids.
I don't know if you watched any of those.
I did not. Read about it, but
It
I
was
did not
very
watch it.
interesting to me that there was not as much success as they thought.
No, the gap between...
The guy who won one of the races was actually
From
not
Las
on
Vegas.
steroids too.
Oh, really?
He was clean, yeah.
Oh.
One of the swimmers. I think it was like 50. Which one of them? Anyway, but the other word, posthumanism, is where the world has now changed from being people-centered. Right, and so this gets into like all really weird like what if questions, like if we could settle on Mars, should we leave the Earth? Well, God put us here on this Earth. You know, like it's a special part of creation. God made the heavens and the earth and separated the water, like all those sort of things. But then he closes, at least in this section, with pointing out this distinction that limits are bad versus limits as gifts. And I think that's language that we can at least sympathize with, that as people who say, I'm a poor, miserable sinner in need of Jesus, that I am not actually made to exceed my limits, right? I'm actually made to live within the limits of the things that God has given to me and rely on Christ for everything. Right? It's sort of this, am I dependent or not on someone else? And so then he says the idea is what he calls Christian humanism. It's not to reject AI, but it grounds it in a higher role of vocation, which is somewhat like what you said. Like it's God gives these gifts to the church and then to the world. And so AI is a tool that we can use in love and service of our neighbor. But then at the same time, like he writes, we can be concerned about it and we can actually care about it, not necessarily because it has anything to do with the gospel per se, but just because our neighbor is affected by it. And if our neighbor is losing this or that job or this or that thing, we can have concern for that because, God calls us to love our neighbor. And of course, our neighbor is not just the person around us, it's a person in need, it's a person who we see on a regular basis, stuff like that.
I think it's a good tool. But again, that's my personality. I'm very much so in the middle of everything. Right? I see its pros and the cons. But to go back to your original question, should we be paying attention to what the Pope says about this? I think so. I think it's valuable information.
It's at least contributing to a conversation. And
that might not otherwise happen.
Right. And that's like I remember when it was sort of first coming, Andy Jones, one of the guys he graduated a couple of years before me from the SEM, wrote the book, 10 Questions Every Christian Should Read When They Read the Bible, which is a great book on reading Scripture. He said something like, we need to be a part of this conversation. That if we, as Christians, do not take part in a conversation about technology, then it will be formed without our thoughts, right? And so if anything, even if we might not agree with a lot of what he says about what the gospel is, and that this is one of the complaints too I've read is that he makes the gospel out to be kind of like a be good people, and sort of like a moral type thing, which you can kind of hear if you read through what this guy summarized in that way. But we can still appreciate that he's contributing something to the conversation that people will probably at least hear, if not necessarily listen to as well.
It's a good article.
It was good. It was good.